You know you might not be as lazy as you think, it's just that the way we're told to organize isn't always right. I used to think that if I just bought more bins, more trays, more labels, I'd finally get my home under control. But honestly, all I ended up with was more pressure. And it wasn't just my house that felt cluttered, it was my mind too. Today I'm sharing 9 truths that I've tested and found to be really effective in making my space feel light and livable without having to declutter every single day. I've tried a lot over the years, but these small, honest shifts have made the biggest difference. No perfection, no pressure, just simple, real changes that help even on the busiest days. And the first one, I haven't folded pajamas in over 15 years and laundry hasn't piled up since. Let's start with the first thing. Don't try to tackle the whole house at once. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you need to clean everything in sight before you can really make progress. I've been there myself, where I look around the house and feel like I have to tackle it all at once. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway, and it feels overwhelming just thinking about it. But this approach rarely works. Instead of feeling accomplished, it only leaves you exhausted and frustrated, especially when you don't see immediate results. Here's the thing: you don't need to clean every room to make a difference. In fact, trying to clean the entire house at once often leads to burnout. Instead, focus on one small area that you use regularly. It could be the kitchen counter, the dining table, or even just the bathroom sink. These smaller everyday spaces are perfect places to start because they're often the areas you interact with the most, and their cleanliness makes a bigger impact on your mood than you might realize. For example, I began with the kitchen sink. Every morning I'd look at the sink when I woke up, and it was usually filled with dishes from the night before. I decided to take just 5 minutes to wash and tidy the sink before I did anything else. At first it felt like a small change, but that one simple act had an incredible effect on how the whole kitchen looked. Suddenly, the space felt more organized and less chaotic. And guess what? That little bit of progress was enough to motivate me to do more. Starting small can seem insignificant, but it's actually incredibly powerful. When you see that one area cleaned, it gives you a sense of accomplishment and control. It reduces the anxiety that often comes with looking at a messy room, and you start to realize that the space doesn't have to be perfect to feel good. Clean one spot and it's easier to move on to the next. You'll feel more confident about keeping other areas tidy as well. Plus, when you focus on one area at a time, you prevent that feeling of being overwhelmed. There's no need to aim for perfection right away. You're simply trying to create a small win that boosts your energy and makes the next step feel more achievable. And over time, these small changes add up to a much bigger transformation without the stress of tackling everything at once. But once you've got that small area under control, the next step is to establish daily habits that help you keep it that way. Want to know how to make sure your home stays clean every day without feeling like you're constantly cleaning? Well, in the next video, we'll dive into the habits that you can start implementing today to make sure your home stays organized and clutter-free without the overwhelm. Trust me, once you incorporate these habits, your space will stay consistently clean with minimal effort. You don't want to miss this. It'll change the way you approach keeping your home tidy. Now, let's move on to the next truth you need to know about decluttering. It gets worse before it gets better. I know this might sound frustrating, especially if you're just starting to declutter, but it's totally normal. The process of cleaning and organizing often involves creating temporary chaos. You might feel like you're making things worse before they get better, but trust me, this is a crucial step. For example, when I tackle a closet or a drawer, I take everything out first. And guess what? The entire room looks like a disaster zone. Piles of clothes, shoes, and papers everywhere. It's overwhelming. But if I didn't pull everything out, I wouldn't be able to see what needs to go and what should stay. The mess is just part of the process. Here's the key. Don't let the temporary mess stop you. It's important to have a clear vision of what you want your space to look like when it's done, and this messy phase is just the first step toward that. You have to trust the process and remind yourself that it's all for a better outcome. It might feel like you're failing when you see the clutter building up, but this phase is just a transition. Once everything is out and you can start sorting and organizing, that's when the real transformation happens. I'll admit the first time I went through this, I almost quit because of how bad it looked. But once I sorted everything and got rid of the items I didn't need, the space opened up and felt so much lighter. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by the mess you've made, take a deep breath and remember you're moving forward. This temporary mess is the key to creating the clean and organized space you want. The payoff is worth it. Now that we've talked about the messy part, let's move on to the next truth. Knowing where your clutter is coming from makes all the difference. Now let's dive into the third truth. Decluttering doesn't work if you're always waiting for that perfect moment of free time. I'm sure many of us have been there telling ourselves, "I'll clean when I finally have a few hours to spare." But guess what? That time never seems to come, especially if you have a busy life, kids, or work that's constantly demanding your attention. And so, the clutter keeps building and we feel overwhelmed. The key is to stop waiting for large chunks of time and start focusing on small tasks that can fit into your day. For example, instead of thinking you need hours to clean up the living room, try folding the blankets on the couch while you're waiting for dinner to cook or water to boil. It's just 5 minutes, but it's enough to keep things from piling up. Spending 10 minutes every day, even in short bursts, will go further than attempting to clean everything at once. You'll find that these little moments add up and keep things under control. Over time, it will feel like less of a chore because it's just part of your daily routine. So the next time you feel like you don't have enough time to declutter, remember, it's not about doing it all at once. It's about those quick, easy wins that keep your space from getting overwhelming. Now that we've addressed how small actions can make a big difference, let's move on to the next important truth. Decluttering isn't a one-time event, it's an ongoing process. Let's dive into the next truth. Decluttering is not something you do once and then forget about. I used to think that once I had cleaned out my entire space, I'd be done. When I moved into my new home, I thought, this is it, I've finally decluttered, it's all set. But a few months later, I had a baby, and suddenly my life and the way I needed to organize things changed completely. What once worked for me no longer did. The thing is, your home is always changing because life is always changing. When something big happens like a new job, a baby, or a move, your space needs to be reassessed and adjusted. And that's okay. Decluttering isn't a one-and-done task. It's an ongoing process that requires attention from time to time, especially when your lifestyle or routines change. For example, after having my baby, I realized that the things I kept before no longer served me in the same way. Some items I no longer used, while others had gained more importance. The moment I started viewing decluttering as something I would do regularly instead of a one-time effort, I was able to make small, manageable adjustments to my space. This approach kept my home more functional and helped me avoid that overwhelming feeling of, I need to do it all at once. When you accept that decluttering is part of life, a routine rather than a task you only do once it takes the pressure off. It's no longer a giant project that you dread. It becomes a small, manageable part of your regular life, which makes it feel much less overwhelming. Now that we've talked about how to change your thinking around decluttering, let's move on to the next important truth. The fear of what if I need it can often stop you from letting go of things. Let's move on to the fifth truth. The fear of, what if I need it later, is often the reason we hold on to clutter. We've all done it, keeping things we never use just in case we might need them one day. It's the cables you've kept for years, that extra set of dishes in the cupboard, or the clothes that no longer fit. You keep them because of that nagging thought, what if I need this in the future? But here's the reality. Most of the time, these things sit untouched, taking up valuable space. So, how do we break free from this fear? Start by asking yourself these 3 questions. 1. When was the last time I actually used this too? How much would it cost to replace if I needed it again? 3. Could I borrow it, rent it, or get by without it if I ever really needed it? For example, I held onto 3 micro USB cables even though I only had one device that needed them. I finally asked myself, when did I last use these? The answer was clear. Never. Letting them go was a relief, and honestly, I haven't missed them once. The key here is understanding that holding on to something out of fear isn't helpful. In fact, it just creates more clutter. By getting rid of items you don't truly need, you'll create more space and clarity both physically and mentally. Once you let go of the fear of what if, you'll realize how freeing it feels. It's a simple shift that can make a huge difference in how you approach decluttering. With this in mind, let's move on to the next truth. Sometimes it's okay to not be ready to let go of everything, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to be ready to let go of everything right away, and that's the 6th truth we need to talk about. Decluttering isn't always about taking action now. Sometimes it's about giving yourself space to feel what an item means to you. And rushing that process can actually make it harder to let go later. We often hear things like, just toss it, or if you haven't used it in a year, it's time to go. But what if your heart's not there yet? What if that item, even if it's just an old note or a worn-out shirt, still holds something you're not quite ready to release? For me, it was a wedding invitation. It stayed in my drawer for nearly 3 years. Every time I came across it, I hesitated. Not because I needed it, but because it reminded me of a moment I wasn't ready to say goodbye to. When the time finally felt right, I snapped a photo, thanked it, and let it go without guilt, without pressure. You're allowed to take your time, especially with sentimental things. If it helps create a hold box, a small bin for items you're unsure about. Label it with a date and come back to it in 6 months. Often that bit of distance is all you need to decide with clarity instead of emotion. The goal isn't to declutter fast, it's to declutter well. And sometimes going slow is the most honest pace. And when we do give ourselves that permission, we're able to move into the deeper work. Understanding why we're decluttering in the first place, which brings us to the next truth. The 7th truth. Your motivation for decluttering matters more than any method you use. If your goal is just to make space for more stuff or to impress someone, the clutter will come right back. Because your intention wasn't about creating peace, it was about keeping up, and that never lasts. For a long time, I used to declutter my wardrobe just so I could feel justified buying new clothes. I'd toss 5 tops and replace them with 5 new ones the next week. It felt like progress, but nothing ever really changed. My mornings were still rushed, and I still stood in front of the closet thinking I have nothing to wear. Everything shifted when I stopped asking, what do I want to throw out, and started asking, what do I actually need to feel calm? That question led me to keep the clothes I actually wear, the ones that make me feel like myself. Now my closet isn't trendy, but it's peaceful. It's easy to find things and even easier to get dressed. When you're clear about why you're decluttering, maybe it's to feel lighter, sleep better, or simply make space to breathe. The way you approach your home changes. You stop chasing perfection and you start designing a space that works for your real life. And that deeper clarity makes every decision easier, especially when you live with other people, which brings us to the next truth. Now we're at the 8th truth, one that's especially real when you share a home with other people. Decluttering isn't a solo mission when the space isn't just yours. You might be ready to simplify, but your spouse clings to every cable just in case, or your kids think the floor is where everything belongs. It's easy to feel like you're swimming against the current. But here's what helps stop trying to declutter for everyone and start with what you can control: your own corners. When I first started, I didn't touch the shared areas. I focused on one personal spot, my tea corner. I cleared out chipped mugs, organized my favorite blends, and made it peaceful. That tiny space gave me a sense of calm that carried through my day. And then something shifted. My husband noticed. A week later, he sorted through the tech junk drawer. My daughter followed suit by organizing her art shelf. Not because I told them to, but because they felt the energy change. The truth is, change spreads. Quietly, gently. You don't need to demand it or force it. You just need to model it in one visible, calming space. That's where trust builds and habits start to ripple outward. And with that mindset, we're ready for the 9th and final truth, one that sets you free from doing it the minimalist way. This is the final truth, and it's one many of us need to hear out loud. You don't have to be a minimalist to live in a peaceful, clutter-free home. There's often an unspoken belief that if you're not living with bare walls and 10 items or less, you're somehow failing at simplicity. But real homes are lived in, emotional, and full of stories. The real goal isn't to have less, it's to have less noise. That means you can keep the cozy blanket that makes your evenings feel soft. Or the tea set your mom gave you, even if you only use it once a year. I still keep mine not because I need it every day, but because it brings me calm. At the same time, I finally gave away 5 mismatched mugs that added nothing but visual noise. Decluttering doesn't mean stripping your home down to nothing. It means being honest about what actually matters to you, what makes you feel at ease, supported, or just happy to look at. The rest, you're allowed to let it go. Because a light life isn't about looking like a magazine. It's about living in a space that feels like you, a version of you that breathes easier. So those were 9 quiet truths that have completely shifted the way I approach decluttering, not perfectly, but peacefully. If you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or just tired of the cycle, maybe you don't need a full reset. Maybe just one small shift is enough to start breathing easier. And if today's video gave you even one moment of clarity or calm, then I'm really glad you watched. What's even more powerful than knowing these truths is having small, repeatable habits that quietly hold your space together even on messy days. I'll be sharing some of those next, and trust me, once you have them in place, the clutter doesn't stand a chance. So come back tomorrow. It's the kind of routine that once you see it, you won't want to live without. And if any part of this resonated with you, feel free to like the video, share it with someone who needs it, or leave a comment. I'd love to hear which truth hit home for you. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, especially if you're ready to make a clean, calm home feel a little more effortless every day.